That is some of the good stuff. So, all right, well, welcome everybody. We're going to record this so folks that aren't with us can follow along and listen to the recommendations and everything that comes out of the branding tech visit today. We always like to start this process with talking a little bit about what we heard. So as you know, we spent all day Tuesday and then had a meeting on Wednesday morning in input meetings. Very well attended. We had great representation from the organizations throughout the community, and all in all, very, very positive. There weren't any detractors. There weren't any naysayers. If there was anything, there was a difference in understanding what viable, let's see the best way to say it, what the most appropriate way to revitalize downtown was. There it was probably a little bit more willingness to knock down historic buildings in exchange for surface parking lots than I would like to see at this point. And we'll talk a little more about that. It was not overwhelming in nature, but at this point in the game, what it did was it highlighted some opportunities for us to know what we need to communicate on. So all in all, the positivity was very, very high. We had a great turnout of young people that came to the public meeting on Tuesday night, both young professionals as well as high school students that came out. Everyone knew what PKB was. Everyone knew the initials. We talked a little bit about the difference between PKB and P-Berg, which was kind of interesting. But, again, all those were part of it. And I think Aaron and I just really walked away with a very positive impression. And no matter what the physical dynamics of a community are, when you have an emotional mindset where the community is starting to gel and people are starting to score some wins, you can handle all the other issues. So we were really, really excited about that. One of the other things that we like to share is we like to talk a little bit about what we saw while we were here. First of all, with a focus on the organization and the downtown, one of the first things that stuck out to Aaron and I before we even stepped foot here was some of the pre-existing graphics. You all have done a very, very good job. You put a lot of thought into what you were going to do. You didn't just slap a logo up there. You resisted the typical temptation to put a skyline of your buildings and that kind of thing. And because of that, you have been able to create an identity, not just a logo, but an identity that people have started to associate with. Now, in addition to that, as you've gone through and you've created your series of events, you have done an amazing job at using graphic cues to connect those together. Okay? I just told Wendy a little while ago, of all of the communities that we've ever worked with, I cannot think of another place where we have been asked to come in and consult on a community where the pre-existing conditions were so good. Okay? So I want you to use that as kind of there are going to be things where we're going to be recommending changes and tweaks to certain things. Sometimes the changes and tweaks are going to be very similar to pre-existing conditions. It's simply bringing it into the brand system. The difference is, up until this point, everything that you've done has had to be almost a start from scratch decision, because you created an identity, but you didn't necessarily create a communication platform. So we wanted to deconstruct what you had and then build it back up and build a system that was easily expandable. One of the things that I noticed, and I started to dig in to the logo itself, and we came to this realization with you guys on Tuesday morning. The colors are so unbelievably signature, and they tie in, and they're very, very easy to pick that 3-color palette out. We wanted to use that as a foundation. We wanted to keep that the same. Um, I love the fact that you use down style, which means, lowercase letters, especially for the downtown. As I started to dig into it a little bit more, one of the things that I started to find was there was some problem with always having lowercase letters for PKB. Because when it's lowercase, it always forces there to be the descender of the P and the ascender of the B. And it always means that you're going to have these kind of these spaces in the composition where all caps gives you a nice tight square. So as we started to look into this, one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to move this PKB into being its own self-contained icon. We wanted to design a PKB that no other place has. So that more than just the letters, but that is who you are. So it's just kind of an evolution, and I'll dig into that a little bit more. But all in all, I mean, overwhelmingly impressed with the professionalism of what you all have brought to the table. The second thing that I wanted to show you has absolutely nothing to do with branding, but I think as a consultant, it's our job to point it out. And I would argue that it is one of the biggest factors that this community needs to focus in on as you move towards achieving vibrancy downtown. And these are some of the pictures I took. The brick walls of downtown Parkersburg. The streetscape is fantastic. The upper architecture is intriguing. But over and over and over again, the street level interaction between the buildings and the doesn't exist. It literally, you would be hard pressed in a lot of these circumstances to find a way where you tell people more to go away. It is just nothing for you to see here. Now, in addition to this, I had taken one other photo, and I decided to pull it out because I did not want it to be clustered with these examples. But the photo that I had in there was of the newly redone Ohio Valley Regional MOVRC. Yeah. So that building is a building where we see, and make sure I'm getting this right, Aspire is in the far left-hand bay of that building. Then we have Parkersburg Brewing Company. And then we have two what essentially should or at one time were retail bays that now serve as unbelievably passive lobby space for that building. That particular building, because the building is done very well, it looks great from the outside now. That is a perfect place for this community to experiment with what we call micro retail. One of the biggest things that we found lately is that there's a discrepancy between needed retail square footage and available retail square footage in historic downtowns. There's actually more square footage available in a traditional retail bay than modern retail actually needs. So you end up having a discrepancy between the cost of being in a place and the revenue you get. So those small spaces up front, immediately on the street front, that right now simply are sofas or a blank unused lobby, those potentially could become retail contributors to that and still have kind of a centralized place you go in and you pass through. And in looking in there, I think it's something that you could do where you can activate that space from a retail standpoint, keep it from breaking up the consistency of the businesses without having to change any of the operations of the business. So what I will do when I share with you the resources, I'm also going to share with you a couple things that focus in on what we call micro retail. We've actually even worked with a community where we helped, instead of doing facade grants, they offered grants that allowed people to put in what they call demising walls. And being able to separate out the difference between a micro retail front end and an office back end. So those were some of the things that we kind of saw, and I felt like I wanted to share that stuff with you. So does that make sense with everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So from there, we want to move in and we want to talk about this destination brand. Now, one of the things that you all did that is very atypical, and we talked about this on Tuesday, when you all landed on an identity for this organization, you chose an identity that actually was the destination, the place. Most of the time, people pick a group name and then they use the group name to tell the story of the place. When we interviewed the young professionals on Tuesday night, we very specifically asked the question, when you hear downtown PKB, do you think of a group or do you think of a place? Overwhelmingly, the answer was place. That's perfect.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was surprised, but that's perfect. That's the great answer. Because what that does is that sets us up for an unbelievable transition for some of the things that we might be looking towards in the near future organizationally. So as we talk about the destination brand, I want to be very clear. Our recommendation is that you solidify downtown PKB, but also begin to make that brand available for your business community to use as it becomes the destination brand. Now, that release does not happen until an organizational alternative is adopted, and we talked about that, but that very much, as we went through the process, that very much got confirmed. Now, what we always talk about is we try to simplify this down, and in a branding toolbox, we try to give a community 4 major areas that they can build continuity from. Defining a color palette, selecting uniform typefaces, creating a consistent message, and then the overall approach to graphics. And the graphics doesn't mean that every logo has to have a picture, as you've proven. So the first one here was super easy. We went with the color palette. We identified and solidified those 3 main colors. And then we actually adopted a warm gray instead of black to go with those. That warm gray, it brings in a subtle sophistication that the black just doesn't have. It doesn't affect legibility, but it's just a really, really nice complement in that. Now, from there, we decided we wanted to stay in the same family in terms of a sans serif typeface like you had been using, but we wanted to pick something that could truly be yours and something that was extremely versatile. So what we did was we selected a typeface that's called Montserrat. And the thing that I like about Montserrat is in a single typeface, it has 8 different weights. So you have a tremendous amount of variation in how you speak because you've got that kind of thin to thick. Now, typically, we will define 2 or 3 typefaces as the typeface family. Here, what we wanted to do is we wanted to strongly solidify one, giving you that freedom to adopt accent typefaces as appropriate in your event extension. And we'll show you exactly what we mean by that. But one of the things that I feel like I saw as I looked through the stuff you had done was several times there was a desire to have a script typeface, but then the script didn't really exist in the same family. It didn't necessarily felt like it matched up. So we want to give you that latitude to be able to have a little room. And just a little design knowledge on this, the sans serif just refers to the fact that it doesn't have doohickeys, that's the technical term, on the ends of the letters. You know, a serif typeface is far more traditional, and it has those little doohickeys that kind of go out on those are called serifs. So sans serif is without serif. one of the things that you need to know about a sans serif typeface is that sans serif is intended to be content neutral. When a script typeface is selected, you're selecting that typeface because it has a personality to it already. This is intended to not have a personality so that you can infuse either a single or a diverse personality into it. So everybody knows Helvetica. Helvetica is the same typeface as, let's see, Crate and Barrel, Bloomingdale's, Jeep, American Apparel. You know, all these Sears, all these major brands, their logos are actually Helvetica. But because they entered into them with a content neutrality, they were able to build the meaning and the variation between those brands. And I think if you ever talk to anybody, I know American Apparel's is out of business now, but or bankrupt at least. But American Apparel brings a very different approach to clothing as Sears, but they're using the same graphics to tell who they are. So from there, we always talk about a word type. This is just to kind of show you what downtown Parkersburg looks like in that typeface. It plays off of some of those same keys. It has really nice round O's, which is important because downtown has two of those. It creates a nice symmetry. So you kind of see how that comes together. Then from there, with some of the brand values, here were some of the things that we heard that we wanted to integrate in to this overall brand system. And this is some of these values, they cross the line between both organizational values and district values. But you have a proven track record. You have started to earn trust. There's a very positive relationship that started between downtown and the people of the region. People know downtown PKB. They know even simplified down to PKB. They started using it themselves. So not only is there awareness, but there is adoption. So those things are super important. You are building momentum. People can point out the momentum. People who are on the periphery of being involved still know enough to say this and this and this as examples of good. So that's a great place to be. You have proven that you're good or great at events. That's a good thing, and it's also from an organizational standpoint, you want to be more than just an event programmer. So, but that is something that here it's a good thing. And then you've also shown that you're a savvy organization. That level of confidence that people have with the ability of downtown PKB is a really good thing. You're starting to see a trust factor that's really going to drive additional support and empowerment to do things. The perfect example, I kind of fell in love with the building right across the street from us, and some people pointed to that as the perfect place for the next parking lot. And, you know, I look at a building like that and I'm like, that's gorgeous. And what's so funny is it's like people are quick to say we should knock down that big abandoned building, but then nobody even talked about Battlestar Galactica headquarters back here at City Hall.
Oh man, you know what?
So I think one of the things that really was very impactful to me was being able to help people understand, drive along the property that goes up against the flood wall and show me experience-based opportunities. You can park, you can look at the backside of satellite dishes. That's about it, So engagement of that water. And then one of the most exciting things to me, as the market continues to move your direction, you truly have the opportunity to create a Parkersburg-specific architectural solution to engagement with the river, considering that you've got this flood wall. That's going to be some interesting things like figuring out ways that you can have parking configurations underneath buildings, elevating the buildings high enough to see them over the flood wall, being able to get view sheds that people are going to be able to tie into. The great thing is you've got the ability to build height without irritating anybody on the other side of disturbing view sheds, because there are no pre-existing view sheds really. So I think those are all the things that kind of factored in. So I think from all of those factors, Aaron and I were just really, really excited with what we heard and what we saw. So once we talk about that, we move into something that we call a brand statement. It's a multi-paragraph narrative that helps us to kind of land on the direction that we want to go. We knew that we wanted something that was going to be simple and easily expandable for you all. You tried to get there with the old tagline, which was "I am home." But I think we also talked about that was a somewhat one-dimensional message that seemed to focus a little too much on a residential recruitment strategy instead of capturing that energy and that momentum and the opportunity. So that's all the things that factored in. So I'm going to read this to you right now. Downtown PKB is an energetic place, the warmest of welcomes to the state, the heart of our cultural community, and the soul of our riverfront city, Parkersburg, West Virginia. PKB is the place to savor the flavors. From casual to gourmet, our diverse independent restaurants are on the leading edge of driving activity in our downtown. PKB is the place to celebrate community. We take to the streets to be entertained, listen to great music, taste unique culinary creations, partake in local craft brew, and build lasting friendships. PKB is the place that inspires. Our creativity is on display in the many galleries, performing arts venues, and artistic businesses in downtown. Our local arts destinations captivate the senses while growing a sustainable creative culture in our community. PKB is the place to live an active life. You can exercise at lunch along our walking and biking trail, paddle on our 2 downtown rivers, or simply relax to the calming sounds of the water at our riverfront park. Most importantly, PKB is the place to connect. Young professionals, growing families, longtime residents, and visitors are drawn to downtown by their common love of the place, a place where they can appreciate life, join the movement, and be part of what happens next. Downtown PKB, this is the place. So with that, what you see is this kind of evolution of the letters into something that are just very, very, it's almost like they're so simple that you're confidently stating who you are. And this simple phrase, this is the place to start a business, this is a place to move downtown, this is the place to take a rest, this is a place to spend the weekend, this is the place to have dinner with friends. It is a simple statement. And, I will say a lot of communities, they try to run these statements through the incorrect filter. They ask the question, why can we say this and nobody else can? Well, any downtown that is trying to reinvigorate itself can make this statement. But any shoe company could have said, just do it. It is not about the statement. It is about how easy it is to repeat it so that it means something. How easy it is for the public sector and private sector to echo that statement so that by saying it and repeating it, no one else can get close to it. Does that make sense? So we'll talk and show you a little bit more about that. So this overall kind of identity, that being able to see how that the letters come together, building in some examples and starting to integrate in an approach to graphics. This overall system, as you can see, we tried to build a lot of different options. One of the things that I found about the pre-existing logo is there was really only one lockup. There was only one layout of how it worked. So if you needed something that was really, really horizontal, or if you needed something that was a little bit more stacked. So you can see we did a lot of different things here. We created some different ways that it could tie in together and even some variation in that. This way, as you implement it, it can start to simplify down into some one color usages and things like that. But it gives you all the versatility to be able to use it where you need to use it. You can also use the typeface and the colors to own that hashtag that people are using, so you can promote that over and over again. Now, that is just really talking about the destination brand. Now, from there, we also want to be able to position this organization to be prepared for that time where you all achieve that Main Street status. And we feel comfortable that that is a realistic option in the very near future, and we feel comfortable that that's the kind of thing that you all should be thinking about and talking about now. We have worked with communities enough to be pretty confident that when you have a Main Street organization, it carries a lot of value for it to be called Main Street, because that name connects you in with a statewide and national network. And as long as we know that that downtown identity exists to promote the destination, we can be comfortable adopting that Main Street identity for the organization. So what I wanted to do here was I wanted to do something that was very clean, very simple, and simply introduce Main Street PKB. I want to keep the acronym. I added a fourth color tying into that 4-point approach. And as you all go through this organizational process, as you go through this process of becoming a Main Street community in West Virginia, with that comes additional services and things like that. But I would actually urge you to go through, look at the committees that exist. You have 6 committees as defined, but you know, we all know that finance is the sexiest of committees. You have, I tell you what, you do a call for volunteers for the finance committee and the people flock, right? One of the things that we haven't necessarily done the best at in the Main Street world is creating identities that people are drawn to. So one of the things that I'm simply showing here is, as you're going through this process, I want you to really evaluate your committees, evaluate what they're for, and evaluate how you're going to bring people in. Because a committee is only as good as the volunteers that fuel it. So I'm actually recommending that there be a little bit of clarity in the organization between the committee that is the promoter and let's say the programmer of events, and the committee that is focused on marketing and communications. And if you deem and you continue to feel like those are 2 separate tasks and 2 separate groups, what I'm showing is I'm showing that event organizer being known as PKB Alive, because those events, those are the goals of the events, bringing activity to your downtown. And then that communication is Connect PKB. Business outreach, obviously, is Outreach PKB, and then your design committee. And then your finance committee and your org committee are both the type things where they're just so unbelievably organizationally driven that they don't necessarily need that same level of external identity. Does that make sense? Yep. So by no means do these names need to be the names. I just wanted to come up with something that maybe would stoke that fire of creativity as you talked about the tasks, the responsibilities, and how you tell that story of this reproducible 4-point approach and understanding these elements that make a Main Street approach. Does that make sense? So then from there, after you have that organizational identity, you can start to see things like it's making its way into the business card, so that this is a little bit like a mullet of a design, you know, business in the front, party in the rear. It's kind of that same thing from a business card design. You've got the organizational identity where you're sharing all of your info, but then on the back, you're really highlighting the place that you're promoting. So I wanted to show how those 2 incorporate and work together. That makes sense. Then from there, digging into the brand extension, now that we have the foundation, how do we take that and apply it to the events that we put on? So with these, and again, like I say, I hope that you see a lot of credit given to the work that was already done. And I kind of take this as an opportunity to just make you think about things. The Point Park concert series, as sexy as that name is, you know, we saw the video that you guys put out on I mean, it's awesome, and it is a concert on the water. It's so a lot of times not all concert series are made alike. So you want to make sure that you're playing the assets. I mean, one of the coolest things that Aaron and I saw with, you know, all the boats that come out, that's cool stuff. So maybe thinking about incorporating that concerts on the river and denoting that it's an event that happens in a waterfront, because we know that the flood wall serves as a physical barrier. So maybe we can use our events to drive a conceptual connector to break down some of that physical barrier. In addition, like literally one of the cutest logos that I've ever seen for Monster Mash on market. So what I wanted to do here was simply show how you can take the same thing. Now, what I did here was the big conceptual difference is I simply aligned the three monsters in a 3-component setup and then mimicked the same color pattern as the icon, so that you always see that blue, green, purple that you see in the PKB. Very simple. But I don't think anybody would look at the new logo and say that we thought the old logo was bad. You know what I mean? And then this is another example where for Monster Mash, because it's such a unique event all to itself, you can select a signature typeface. But then when we get back to on market, we kind of brought it back into that Monster out to tie it back into the system. Winterfest, okay, same thing with Winterfest. Tried to take those elements. Here we were able to tie into another script typeface, and then you see we took that PKB, we turned it into a snowflake. So now all of a sudden it's like every winter event has a snowflake, but now your snowflake is truly your snowflake. So things like that help to kind of tie it in together. Downtown Throwdown, again, tying into some of those same things, being able to use your typefaces to connect the dots. This is this event is one of those events that I think people can really love. But when you have a barbecue events always look one way. And when you have a craft beer event, it always looks a different way. And you're walking down that line. So I think it's cool to kind of keep a cleanliness and allow that personality to exist. Taste of Parkersburg, you know, you guys just wrapped this up. Again, the pre-existing logo, I don't think that, I mean, it looks like a logo that I would have designed. So I'm simply showing a change just because there's a different foundation, but it was good. Now, this just shows how you can integrate that PKB identity into it. So something to think about. I do think that even though people would probably still call it Taste of Parkersburg, I think everybody will refer to it that way. Adopting the PKB for the logo makes sense because it just keeps putting it back in. Signage. Okay. So I want to give you guys a caveat before I show you what I did do, because there was one thing that I did not dig into much, and that is the trailblazer signs. The trailblazer signs are the signs that exist after a gateway and before a destination. They're the ones that typically have 3 destinations, and they'll say, you know, this is this way, this is this way. The reason why I didn't do those is because, in all honesty, those signs should really exist on a city level. And even the signs that make their way into the downtown, I think that because of the contemporary nature of your identity, I don't think that you want to put too much of the PKB identity onto a sign that might have a 10-year lifespan. But I think that the Parkersburg logo is the thing that's more appropriate there. Now, that being said, those are some things that we can kind of help flush out. I'll be more than happy to show an example of what a trailblazer might look like in that way, and then also show how you might be able to incorporate the three colors of the downtown identity into almost a districting strategy without having to incorporate the graphics. But I didn't want to do too much, and I certainly didn't want to show you a logo and have it be in the wrong place. So I did want to look at gateways. So we have an opportunity to put a gateway sign on the side of the printing building. The printing building is going to be repainted white, and then we have an opportunity along that left-hand column. I designed something that would go on a vinyl banner that would be hung on it, so that the lifespan might be a little bit lower, but it gives us the opportunity to do something really cool and impactful and contemporary in design. So what I'm showing is something that looks kind of like this. Yep. So it just kind of makes somebody stop in their tracks as they go through and they see it. Now, in addition, you have an opportunity to put a gateway sign in the triangle on the eastern side of the downtown. If you can put yourself in that corridor, there are a lot of banners, a lot of car dealer signs, a lot of busyness. So you have to achieve a certain amount of size there to be able to get an impact. I'm showing a graphically oriented sign because of the nature of it being in that triangle, but just, doing something to make an impact. And you see, having a little bit of fun, you made it. You've gotten here. You're in downtown. Banners are of huge importance. A lot of times people over-design banners because when they start with this white screen instead of thinking about the place that they're going in. So I did a solid color background, but I brought in a series of kind of artistic textures. It gives us the opportunity to do some pretty cool things. We can use these colors to help denote, nodes. You can kind of identify, it might be that you take an entire block and one whole block gets purple, and then the next whole block gets green, and then the next whole block gets blue. And you can do that incrementally. The one thing that you don't want to do is I don't want to stand in the middle of the market, look down the street, and have blue, then green, then purple, then blue. It just adds more busyness. So be very strategic with that. The next slide I think is kind of fun, and it's what we call Parkersburg. So yeah. So one of the things that you guys, you have a good amount of municipal parking. There's also private sector parking. You have big blue signs that have big P's on them, but you have to remember that your job as a community is to visually connect the dots with the parking amenities and parking assets. So, I talked about this mindset of it's okay to knock down buildings because we need more parking. We really need to see a parking awareness campaign to help combat that. So you see, I actually designed a very, very long, tall sign that could be kind of a standardized parking entry treatment into those civic lots, and being able to highlight and show people where you are. And then I also created this map, and if you look at this map, and it's a little, like I fudged it a little for impact because some of those things that are highlighted blue are actually car dealerships, but they are paved giant lots with lots of cars on them. So the thing that's kind of interesting about it is that, well, as you travel through a community from a visual impact, there's really no difference between a parking lot and a car dealership in terms of that. So for people that say they're there's no parking. There's parking. We know, and we talked about this on Tuesday, we've got to work on a consumer motivation. Um, we heard the story today from a downtown merchant, and she was very, very reasonable, but she's in the antique store right across from the church where they're restoring the steeple. So the crew has taken up the entire right-hand lane and then has put cones in two of the spots on the left-hand lane and has essentially temporarily eliminated the parking in front of the store. And she said folks aren't coming in. And right now, their consumer motivation is low. I drive by, can't find a parking space, keep going. So, those are the things that we just always have to keep in mind, and being able to tell those stories so that we're not doing this. Yeah, perception is reality. I mean, we're not really doing this as much we're doing this to combat that negativity of there is no parking. We did a campaign in State College, PA, and I designed this ad, and it said, there's simply nowhere to park in State College except for our 2,037 public parking spaces. Right. And it's like...
I may just make one point too. Like, if
Yeah.
you look at that map, the only where there's not much blue shading is Market Street. That's the core that we have left.
Exactly.
The building footprint. Everywhere else
is appropriate peripheral parking strategy. That is what everybody wants.
Appropriate peripheral parking strategy.
Yeah. So like there really are, and in fact, I'm not sure that I put it in here. I don't think I did. I actually created a little logo that says market, not park it. And it was just kind of this whole mindset that it's like, look, we can have the parking conversation all day long. We do not need any more surface lots immediately adjacent to Market Street. And, I think that would be it. You have to start somewhere, and Market, nobody would argue that Market is the appropriate place to start. Like, you want to create density. And it's funny, like the same people who seem to be complaining about no parking also seem to be talking about how amazing Marietta is.
Exactly.
And there's no parking there.
Right. Exactly. So what that shows you is if I'm motivated to go visit a community, it doesn't matter. Right. So it's all ties in together. Okay, so from there we move into collateral. And one of the things that we talked about was having a shopping and dining guide. So we went ahead and put together a cover design for what that could look like. Again, paying back into some of the stuff that you guys have done and really good looking pieces. So, and the nice thing about this is you can imagine, guess what? Change the logo, done, right? So here, I do want to point out a couple things. If you notice, it says 2018 really, really big on it. A lot of people say, why'd you put a date on it? Well, I put a date on it because it's going to be out of date the moment you print it. So do not think that you can print a shopping and dining guide and get away with 3 years of use out of it. You need to just go ahead and put in your mind that this is a print piece with a 1-year shelf life, that it's going to be out of date the moment you print it, and that it needs to be reprinted, and you need to get that quantity, honed in so that you're not wasting. But do not try to have the efficiencies of stretching out its lifespan, because that piece is only as good as the information that's in it. So we also talked a little bit about a business recruitment guide. I actually designed this in my mind as more of a pocket folder, so that it had no content inside and it allowed you to put a series of inserts. So it could be inserts from the organization, inserts from the city, inserts from economic development from the chamber, and it truly serves as the collector for people who are interested in investing downtown. Does that make sense? So it doesn't even have the organization logo on the front. It's literally just the downtown. So it just creates a holder for you. I always like to show how it can make its way into some merchandise. So whether you're doing t-shirts, swell bottles. I don't know if you know about a swell. I've got a 14-year-old daughter who asked for a Swell bottle, and she acted like she was asking for a new car. And I was like, "What is it's a water bottle. Why are you acting so weird? It's a $45 water bottle. That's why. Like, I think that it has, yeah, it has tiny fairies that live in it, and they use their magic to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. And but the reason that I show things like this is, and it doesn't have to be this kind of thing. It can be apparel. There's a concept that we call brand co-oping. And what brand co-oping is the concept of taking a well-known established brand, putting your brand right alongside it so you can transfer the quality of theirs onto yours. So if you're trying to position yourself as an outdoor recreation center, then you might put your logo right next to Patagonia. If you're trying to position yourself as good fishing or boating or biking or those types of things, you might take a brand that is known in that field and tie it to yours. So just doing things that allow you to siphon off cool. And that's why I like to show that. Of course, I like to wear hats, so I always try to have a hat. And then finally, I like to show you how you can tell the story in advertising composition. So we created a series of ads. This is kind of an overarching kind of look and feel. You can't really see on the screen, but like I continue to incorporate that texture, so that left-hand bar actually has some of that texture from the banners. Again, all these are images that we took while we were here. Between Aaron and I think we're going to be sharing with you well over 300 photos that we took while we were here. We color corrected a lot of those. And then we went ahead and we created what are called duotones of some of those, which are the one color or two color images, the all blues, the all purples, the all greens, so that you can use those to immediately hit the ground running with that. Now, this is kind of an overall downtown district type ad, but then we also wanted to show you what it might look like to go through and tell the story of some of the businesses that exist. So we got around, we got inside the businesses, we took shots in there, and here you can see things like Relive Your Childhood. This is the place. Rediscover Your Style. This is the place. Inspired by Art. And then I forgot to rewrite headlines. So this next one is actually not inspired by art, but is down in the marketplace. So, you can start to say, and that literally, I mean, that was just from Aaron and I walking around and snapping the stuff. But I think that this starts to give you a relatively complex approach to overall district marketing and a simplified approach that allows for the businesses to take it and start to run with it as well. So at that point, this is what Aaron and I have been able to work on since yesterday. So it's kind of a quick dump, but we'd love to open it up for your thoughts, your impressions. Do the evolutions make sense? Do the recommendations seem to work with the path that you all are walking down? And what are your thoughts at this point?
Oh, the sun came and went.
What?
Whoa.
Weird. What
Got
did
on
you do,
mood.
Wendy?
There we go.
Really, very.
LED.
very
I'm not a marketing personnel, but I like it. I like
Good.
it a lot.
Good.
Yeah, I think it looks good. I know that I'm just interested to hear Wendy's point of view because I know she is a marketing person, but
Yeah.
I like the logo. The dining guide was really cool.
Cool.
I like that idea as well.
Good.
But
Good.
yeah, and the banner on Chapman Printing was
Yeah, I like
a
that.
great idea.
That reminded me, I always try to share as much as I can. One of the things that we talked about over the course of the process was an extended hours campaign and some sort of strategic event that might help a business to kind of extend those hours. A lot of times we might create an event from scratch on that, But based off of what we heard over the course of the input meetings, I think that you have an opportunity with the art walk.
Yeah.
The reviews that we heard from the positivity of that event from the business sector, not just the participant, but the business owners, saw their cash registers ring. And the last thing you want to do is reinvent the wheel. So one of the things that I might urge you all to look at, and I know that event really is from Art Bridge and multiple partners and that kind of thing, but it seems like Art Walk might be a really good opportunity to maybe do a third Thursday type event that can start to get people coming downtown on a semi-regular process. Just remember, the purpose of an event like that is to teach people to come downtown again. So as long as that's kind of your mindset.
Well, you want to start, you want your businesses to recognize that our events are good for them. To
Exactly.
increase their participation and to gradually start extending hours.
Mhm.
So that
Exactly.
you have nighttime business for your restaurants or things.
Exactly.
You never do anything for one reason.
Right.
And as
Yep.
change
Right.
occurs, as new businesses open, you're not waiting 6 months to come back downtown for the next event.
Right.
You're coming on.
Exactly.
You know, Blenheim
Exactly.
has an island. I had a talk with Mark Lewis. One of the problems that they had was they used to have artisans on the island.
Mm.
Well, it's like Disney World. I used to live down there, and every time somebody came to visit, we took them to Disney. I never went on my own.
Right.
And I took two different friends who came to visit me from Florida to the island. I have no desire to go to the island. There's nothing. But they're trying to reconstitute at the island is having artisans and craftspeople on the island, so that there'd be a reason to attract me to come back to the island. And I think that's something we need to keep in
Right.
town as well.
Mhm.
With the logo, it reminds me of a bank, the B. There's a bank, and maybe it's a Florida bank, and it doesn't resonate. It reminds me of a logo that a bank has somewhere, and I can't remember which bank I was going to. And I think we will. My recommendation is that we just the P without the stem, because I think that's something that we'll want to.
Right.
When you have the downtown underneath of it,
Mhm.
it's pretty evident, but
Right.
it's a little
It's abstract.
stylized
Yes.
and abstract.
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And that transition, I mean, as simple, as simple as those three letters are, you would be shocked at how many variations of that I went through, and then how many. It was kind of interesting. Like, I had a box under the P for a little while, and it really looked horrible. Like, it wasn't confident enough. It looked like it was. It didn't.
Was a prop holding it up.
Right.
The downtown, it took me. Okay. Without anything under it, I'm like, I get to that extreme
is an evolution, but then the thing that you want is when you do get there, it's like you have arrived. To be able to pull something like that off. But I will say, a community your size, with the arts presence that you have, and with the foundation you've already laid in communication, there aren't a lot of places that I would recommend this, because there aren't a lot of places that I would have the confidence they could pull it off and make it theirs. So,
Well, if I may, I really appreciate you keeping the color palette. That was great, and adding that. I mean, I think that's great, and as a testament to
absolutely.
design and keeping that. But initially, when I saw the logo, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be hard for people to. The more I saw it through
used.
and I was like, okay, and the play on it. Let me ask you a question though. What was the inspiration or the idea behind the triangle, with almost like a back arrow pointing? Is there some meaning there, or just the way that you played with the?
No, it's
letter?
actually the way that I had done it the first time. It was Imagine what you're seeing now reversed out. Because like my original composition was I was trying to remove the negative space from the letters and have the negative space become the logo. So the hole in the P, the holes in the B,
Right.
and then I actually had kind of the front hole of the K. So it truly was a green triangle pointing backwards. And it just didn't work. Like it felt too much like an arrow pointing backwards.
Right. Picked up on that.
And now it's a negative space arrow pointing backwards, which we're just going to say it's actually pointing to the P, because it's all about parking at the end of the day.
Can you
Well said.
Can you always find Waldo?
Yeah.
So the summary that you did at the beginning when you were kind of unveiling this whole thing, I liked that whole story that you had there. I mean, is that something that you're envisioning going like on our website? Or,
It can go in a multitude of different ways. Parts of it could potentially be pulled out. I mean, you could easily do a video and have it just voiceover and have that available on the website. We've got a lot of folks that have done that. We've actually had some communities that have taken that brand statement and they'll take the logo and the brand statement and some of the images and they'll kind of compose a little 8x10 of it, and they'll actually frame it and give it to partners or give it to folks in the business community.
It's really good for all of us to have. It's something that I put in my pocket and pull out. Quick little elevator speed.
Right. And it's in little components, like it's written in a modular format so that if you have an ad that's really talking about arts, there's one paragraph that you can pull, drop in, and use for that. So it's intended to be pretty versatile, but it's definitely not intended to be, all on its own. It's not intended to be ad copy. Like you don't necessarily want to go out and buy ad and then run that much copy in a single ad, because it really is. One of the primary goals is to serve as the rekindling of the pride of the local. Because what we know is we need the help of the people who call Parkersburg home to tell the story. So it's that re-engagement and kind of, we want to turn them into our word of mouth advertising.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
it's really the speaking points that we want other people to say about us.
right. And the thing that's cool about it too is it's not intended, like there is no artistic license there. You might decide that there's a paragraph missing. You know what I mean? Like there might be a whole thing that, depending on the nature of what you're doing, you decide that you need to add a healthcare paragraph. Or, there are all kinds of things. And that's what's kind of neat about it, is it truly is it's a living tool that can grow or shrink as needed.
Build on.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have a lot of trust and faith in our team.
Absolutely.
And we can take.
Wendy?
So, I love it.
Awesome.
And here's my thoughts. With the brand statement, help us kind of timeline a marketing campaign to, I could see taking that brand statement and making one of our typography videos with that and even spill it over into commercial. Because we're going to have to rebrand this to the community. And
Sure.
Timeline when we would roll that out. Would we roll it out sometime in July? Would we wait till the beginning of the year? Like what do other communities typically do in terms of that?
It's part of our fall event series, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Which the next big one is September.
3 more concerts, but
Mm-hmm.
and then our partner program, we just took the logo that we had and added the word partners under that.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose we could just do that with the same typeface.
Yeah, and I'll do that for
Okay.
you. Yeah.
We
write that.
like brand management standards. So how does that work in communities letting the community use the brand?
Okay. So what we'll do is, as soon as, and in fact, I've already started working on the style guide document.
Okay.
So we'll create a style guide for you. The style guide will define all the colors, all the typefaces, show you how to use it, how not to use it, explain some of the background details, and then have thumbnails of all the art and everything like that. So we will give you that tool. Now, management is, every community does that a little bit different. We talked about it a little bit on Tuesday. I always lean towards openness versus openness over control, simply because my experiences showed me that very, very rarely do people do things bad with it. We also have found that when made available, if the dialogue is open, then they now feel very comfortable about coming and asking for help if they don't know what they're doing. So then all of a sudden, the biggest thing that you have to worry about is a person who wants to be a partner, who has access to the resources, but then isn't necessarily tech savvy, and then your logo gets stretched. Like that's really like the biggest liability, is it getting stretched.
Well, the colors get changed.
The colors get changed a little. Most of the time, people that don't know better are going to end up using your JPEGs. So it's actually less about color change. It's more about pixelation and stretching. and I've always found that if you ever notice it and you go back and you just kind of offer that helpful advice, it's like there's a thing called a shift key. Hold it, It's like if you hold it, you're not going to stretch it. And they're like, oh my God, I never knew that happened. I love the shift key. And then everybody's happy. So there are, but again, every community's not like that.
Should we do it in front of the main street and the other logo? Or can we start it now, or should we wait?
That was my next question.
Oh,
I don't think
sorry.
that there's any reason why you need to put off adoption of any of the destination brand to wait on Main Street. I think that's all the things that we did are really very much focused on attempting to play off of what you've done. The one thing that I would say is I don't feel like you have to have a huge pressure on yourself to put that much effort into launch. I think that use will be one of the best things that you can do. It's so close to what you've been doing that no one is going to understand that you've done something new. It's just different. And they didn't think about it before, so they're not going to think about it now. The thing you want to open up is you want to open up access. You want to open up access from a partner standpoint as well as a consumer standpoint. So some of the best things you can do is maybe you can go out in the community, get some local business partners and start to make merchandise. And you start to roll merchandise out to folks and then not give it away. This is their home. They will pay for things. So start to make things available, do a nice rolling launch. And then what you do is when you come to the point where you're ready to maybe invest in a campaign or something like that, maybe you do some sort of, heck, there are any number, and we'll talk about this. We'll get our heads together and kind of get a strategy that really feels like, but with the new partner program, maybe what you're doing is you're rolling it out to partners and getting them excited about the evolution of marketing downtown. So there's this ROI that they're starting to learn about. There are a lot of different things, but the thing I can tell you with utmost confidence, there is no right way. There's got to be your way. There's no like standard, this is how you roll out a new brand. Every community is different, and their backstory is different, and the way that they need to connect it out. And the good news is you have as good a reputation for marketing as any organization we've worked with. So you've got that on your side. You can just start rolling it out.
You're talking about the destination brand,
Right. Now, when it comes to the point that you all become a Main Street community, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
And
you can't call you Main Street.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure that.
But what's great about that is Now, where most communities might get that Main Street designation, when that happens here, you have the graphics to go along with it. You have the opportunity to say, you know, you will have gotten the PKB stuff out long enough so that when you announce that this organization is now Main Street PKB, that all the other tools are already out there and can continue to move right along just the way they were. Make sense? Okay. So we can kind of create maybe a graphic timeline that helps to clear that up, but absolutely. The style guide, here's the thing. We want to get the style guide, all the digital assets and everything wrapped up and delivered to you guys by June 30. In terms of kind of mapping out that strategy, that's something that you and I can at any point. Like I'll just know that all you got to do is give me a call. We'll kind of brainstorm on it. We'll map out the suggestions and the different options and stuff like that. And then at any point down the road, you know, if you've got a question, if you've got a new event that you're thinking about doing, and I mean, I get an email like that every couple of weeks from a community that we've worked with. It says, hey, you know, we're getting ready to do this. Just wanted to know if you had any advice. And a lot of times, you know, we'll throw together a quick logo for them just so it doesn't become a stumbling block. And, you know, honestly, that long-term implementation is the thing that helps communities to soar with it. So we love being able to help out. And I'm trying to think what we had a situation. It was kind of interesting. We had a situation with Ripley where we had designed a logo for a car show, and I had purchased an illustration of a car to use in that. And the place that I had purchased the illustration of the car from had actually stolen the art from the original person who drew it. Yeah, it was weird. So like I ended up having to redesign. Like we had done everything on our end. There's no way that you're going to know that you know, vector art that you're purchasing from an art supply house is going to be like stolen. But so we designed a new logo with a new car.
You
And
don't use that art house.
we do not. We do not. So
when you're talking about rolling it out, give me an example. Is it since this is like destination branding? Are we thinking any of our downtown businesses that are promoting their business or events, or whatever it might be, just really wanting them to add that
absolutely,
to it.
even if they're
Add that
just
in their
adding the icon, you know,
advertisement,
yeah,
whatever.
absolutely. Like, you know, it could be, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be graphic incorporation. I mean, you know, it's, Parkersburg Brewing could adopt, you know, this is the place for a great night out. You know, I mean,
Right.
any of those different communication tools, if they can find a way to tie into it and use it and benefit their business, that's what we want to see. But the rollout also is as simple as, at what point do we add the new graphic as our profile pic on Facebook? At what point do we change out the graphic on our website and start to use this? And you know, those are the things that you can just start doing that subtly over time, and you know, people will see it, but they won't click. And then it's after you've got all the pieces in play, and then you say, hey, we're launching the new brand, and then all the stuff's already out there, and they're like, wow, you're really good at this. And it's kind of funny.
Okay, so walk me through this piece of it. So when people see our logo on something now, they know it's our event because the organization is tied to.
I don't know that they know that, first of all. I think that they know that event happens downtown.
Okay.
Moving forward, what you're going to end up having is you're going to end up having the downtown PKB as the place that's highlighted. And like, if let's say we're looking at a poster, it's going to be somewhere that goes up top and then down at the bottom it's going to say sponsored by Main Street PKB.
Gotcha.
you know. So there's going to be that duality of identities at sometimes. But again, it's completely different things. One is about the place association of where an event takes place. The other is about, hey, this is another event that this amazing organization that you should really give money to is doing in your community.
Do you see where I'm going with that? For example, let's just take the River Fest.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an event that's going to be taking place in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't organizing the event.
Right.
So if this new downtown, that's okay.
After Main Street's launched.
That's what I wanted to hear.
There you go.
After Main Street's, after the organizational
Yeah,
alternative.
That's the question that I asked,
Okay,
and
I
I
don't
got a
think I
different
got that
answer.
from, yeah, I didn't get that from the
I didn't ask the
original
question
conversation.
correctly, I
So we
guess.
don't
When?
let that
Because
go.
that's what I,
So we don't let it go, we don't share it and make it available until after Main Street is.
Right. No, I thought that's what I did tell you.
yeah, well, I misunderstood.
Oh, yeah. No,
Because
that's
I'm like,
no, that's absolutely the
really,
intention.
until
You-
we're
you
Main
do
Street,
wanna share it.
We need to.
Exactly. You do
it
want to
is
share
us.
it.
Okay.
You do want to share it,
But
but
not-
you don't want to share it until there's that organizational alternative.
Got it.
Because
Right now,
because
we are the organization.
right,
We
if
are
if you're sharing it now, you're creating organizational confusion.
That's why this is the
But
place.
we're rolling it out, but we're just keeping it
Sorry.
organizational still. is
Right.
What you're saying.
Exactly.
Well, actually, what you're doing, you're rolling it out, but you're limiting the access until the organizational identity comes out because the public doesn't actually know that Downtown PKB is an organization.
Right.
It's, I mean,
They know us as the destination.
they know it as the place and the
Which is
place that
awesome.
things happen,
Yeah,
which
I'm
is
glad-
good.
I'm
Yeah, I
glad
mean
to
that's
hear that.
it's a
That
it
way.
is confusing.
They actually think of us as the events that we put on.
Right. But no, yeah. So to clarify, you are spot on with the and you asked that question on Tuesday. Like you're spot on with that. Yes, you want to share it, but you can't share it. You can't share it with other event organizers. Now, I do think that you could immediately start sharing it with downtown businesses if they're going to incorporate it into their own marketing, and they want to simply highlight where they are. I think that that's okay, but that again, that's some of the subtle nuances that you have to work through
Yeah.
as you deal with the organizational
See,
dynamics
that's
here.
one of the things I'm thinking about our partners. They're partners, they've actually made contributions to help us. That becomes, part of your partner so by extension, you're using that.
Absolutely.
To the place.
And the other thing that you can do is you can probably go ahead and start talking now about how, as an organization, we will be rolling out this destination brand, and starting sometime mid 2018, we'll be making these resources available to event partners and it's like you kind of know to a certain degree that you're going to be able to make them available in the future. And if you're telling people we need to lay the groundwork for the brand rollout first so that we can start to make sure that people don't get confused and that kind of thing, and then after we do that, after we do our job, we're going to make it available for you to use as well so that it can bring those
Yeah.
benefits to you.
My concern is that there are events here that are not.
Right.
And so we built that brand.
Mhm.
That brand has organization, but it is the meaning of savvy, a
Mhm.
great event, that list that
Right.
you had at first. And there are some things that take place downtown that would have a negative impact on our brand.
Right.
And that's reality. I mean, that's just
Sure.
any place. So, I think we do need to watch our brand.
Mhm.
Pretty tough and, at least for another year. Yeah, as long as
Main
it says,
Street PKB, that's what I have control over, and then this becomes the destination of downtown Park.
And you still control it, and you still, I would say even when it is released and your mindset is we want people to be able to use it, I think you should be completely and totally comfortable with the idea um, of being able to restrict that use if you're uncomfortable with the event that's going on. And you know, if you don't feel like the event meets up with that standard, we've had some communities that have done that. I think that if the biggest concern is from the event organizing side, for some reason, typically the biggest concern seems to be from the business side. And what happens if a strip club wants to, you know, it's weird. It's like, I always talk about strip clubs. If it's, yeah, if it's from an event standard, then I think it would be easy enough for you to create a very small list of criteria. And you know, it's almost one of those things where it's like, if you think about it the right way, you can probably figure out some sort of strange, obscure metric that separates out the good from the bad, you know?
Well, the way my mind goes is, well, this is our opportunity to engage with people who are going to be doing events downtown. Don't make them quality events.
Exactly.
This is, I'm looking at it from the positive as well as, let's not, you know, diminish our brand, but let's help, you know, it just gives us a little bit of a hook.
Right.
And that's why I said good housekeeping seal of approval, because it's got to have certain things in it.
Right.
In order to have that seal on it. So in order to use this, we want it to be used for a quality event and not, so it just says, hey, you know,
Right.
or we can make this event a little bit better, or it has to at least meet a minimum of this before.
Absolutely.
we're gonna use it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I just see it as a real positive for building the destination.
I agree that it definitely has some set criteria. Personally insulting people, that this is a fair, general way that
Yes.
we, you know, judge things and apply this, and it's not anything personal.
It's not arbitrary, because people will take it personally.
Yes, they will, yeah, they will.
You could take the approach that I would take, and you just open it up to everybody. And then when the people that you don't want to use it request it, you tell them that you lost the link.
No, they'll just take,
Right. Just be like, this is like, all right, guys. Like, hold on. I definitely am gonna get this to you. I just need to find. I need to find that link. I'll get it. I'll get it back to you as soon as I find that link.
I really, really like the collateral pieces. I
Cool.
like how you can bring it and help to identify downtown as the district with the banners and the parking. I mean, all of that will be
I really love
above and beyond whatever I thought this would do.
And I
Good.
like how you kept the history part is in the collateral and the other promotionals. And
Right.
Was it dual tone, did you say?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yep.
That's how we promote that side of it, the historical side.
Well, and that's what's so great is like the moment that you take an image of a historic building and then you drop it into a duotone image, it's just like it's the best of both worlds, because you get all that texture and like everything that is, you know, what's great about those historic buildings, but then they bring that brand color, and it's just a really cool way to do it. So awesome.
I really like the idea that we need to push the
Parking here, that's great. Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, unfortunately, you know, the parking situation is not a fun, I was on the original parking committee for one track or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
These
And
two
we are the blue sign people that
Right.
got sporadically put all
Right.
over town, but, it's not a fun project, but I think it's critical, because it doesn't matter, everybody says the same thing. I mean, even you, one of you as a visitor coming in was a little concerned with where am I gonna park, and it wasn't real easy to
Right.
navigate to that,
Right.
and you're an
I
outside
get confused
visitor
about
coming
what
in
is
charge.
what. Am I parking in a private lot? Am I gonna get towed? I can't tell. There's the parking lots, some of them are old and it has reserved and a number on it, but I think it might be a city lot now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm parked right here next to the hotel. I'm in a lot that I had to pull a ticket and drive through a gate. Every night that gate is wide open. Every day I walk out there and I expect that there's going to be a ticket on the car because someone has decided that I've left it there too long. You know, it's just like, but yeah,
I've probably been parking for free because after
Yes.
the gate opens, they don't.
yeah. Well, the big thing, and again, it's all about empowering the dialogue. Okay, so I always tell folks, you got to remember there are three different kinds of parking problems: it's a parking capacity problem, a parking management problem, and a parking awareness problem.
Right.
So the most expensive is the parking capacity problem, but that is the place that every community goes to first. So parking management is the strategic use of time limits and enforcement and things like that to drive people where you want to go. And communities are unbelievably counterintuitive to that. Rochester, Michigan is one of the best downtowns in the country. They built a brand new parking garage and they started charging to park in the garage, but didn't charge to park on the street. And it's like, look, your cost structure is incenting street parking. You want people to park in a garage and stay.
Right.
You want street parking to constantly turn over.
Right.
So you need to charge on the street and park in the garage for free.
Right.
But the garage costs us money to build. I know it did. You're still making revenue. It's like, and that's the whole thing. It's like you cannot think about everything in its own vacuum. You've got to think about a parking ecosystem. And then, I mean, Somerville, South Carolina built an $18 million parking garage and wouldn't pay for 3 signs to tell people to go to the parking garage. So nobody was parking, And then finally we were like, you know what you need to do? So that people know that it exists, we need to have an event in the garage.
Yes.
So we wanted to do a garage sale.
Yeah.
And literally let people pull their cars in, set up little mini booths, and have a garage sale. And
Our
it's
transit
like,
authority's gonna love.
and then they freaked out. They were like, wait, you mean people might have fun in a parking garage? No, that's not what it's for. So, it's just,
Yeah.
they did end up doing
Yeah.
they did a Top Deck concert series.
That's cool.
Yeah, so they
And
ended
you
up,
got plenty of parking.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think Lindsay said it about something today. Perception is really reality,
Mhm.
and I think we need to create the perception of that we have.
Right.
And really create that awareness campaign. And I think that would make a difference.
Yeah.
And you had also mentioned the cards, the
Mhm.
businesses. I think that would be beneficial because that would tie to the sign, the banner or whatever we put.
Right.
Those two brands will start to. That's also, right now, they don't have anywhere for the conversation to go.
Right.
When Pam has someone sitting in her chair and they've fed the meter for an hour and they have a 2-hour appointment and they're panicked while they're in the chair because somebody needs to go out and feed my meter.
Mhm.
She would have some piece to say,
Yeah, well, and in addition, technology is on our side. I know that you guys talked about the very bad experience with a credit card booth, but I will say that of all the parking technologies, I hate that. I hate the leave your car, go to some random kiosk location, have to remember a parking space number, type in a parking space number, get a ticket. Do I keep the ticket? Do I put the ticket on my dash? The things that are happening now in parking advancement are pretty cool. A new app and a new service has just launched, allowing communities to start selling parking reservations. So if you've got a hair appointment and that hair appointment is gonna, your hair appointment is gonna last 3 hours, then you can actually reserve a parking space and prepay for it. Show up, park, not worry about it. So, technology's on our side in that issue, and but I think we got to be proactive about awareness and really, I mean, just doing, maybe it's banners, maybe it's doing some things visually to help highlight and take the blue signs and carry them to the next step, so that
campaign really has to start with the businesses, because we've talked to people who are looking to bring a business downtown, but because of the perceived parking issues, and they didn't want their their clients to get tickets, said we're not going to do it.
Right.
We got to start there.
Yeah, and then it all ties in together because it's an ecosystem. You know, then it goes back to all those bricked up storefronts. You know, if you're sitting there having to walk 600 feet to a storefront because you've got a giant sea of dead brick, then all that does is further reinforce I need to park right in front of my store. You know, because it's like I'm either parking in front of the store I'm going to, or I'm parking in the middle of a desert.
And that's the difference between downtown Parkersburg
And Marietta. The vibrancy.
You do not have that block of.
Right.
Mhm.
You have
Yeah,
just
you feel
stores,
like
you
you're
don't have
shopping,
that.
Right.
not hiking.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Like you don't mind parking far, like you get to walk in front of all the other stores, look in the
Yeah.
windows.
Right.
Exactly. So that's another campaign.
Yeah.
Is how do you start to bring that about?
Uh-huh.
And re-daylighting, whatever you want to call it, bringing those storefronts back.
Well, I think
Daylight.
they feel unsafe.
Mhm.
When you have to walk a far distance, unless you're from here and you know, and you're like, whatever, but I think walking across this empty brick
I
building
will say this though,
is-
and I mean I know I'm not a very small person, and I guess don't feel threatened that often, but like I've got a bunch of kids, and like I think about safety and environments. There was no situation while we walked around where I felt unsafe by the combination of the people in the environment and the overall and I mean we walked around some somewhat potentially sketchy. I mean, you know, probably the weirdest spot that I walked past was the odd little corner if you're walking down the alley next to the Smoot.
Yes.
And then it opens up right where the parking garage is. That odd little corner right there to the left
that's-
where someone always seems to be smoking.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a discussion in one of our.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, the cool thing that alley has already had some treatments. It's obviously got the lights in it. Those lights that are in that alley are the lantern parts of those actually historic from somewhere else in the community?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, it
That's
definitely
a lot of
does.
potential.
It definitely
When
does.
it first was developed,
It would be an
little-
amazing beer garden.
I know. Put some lights up there, paint the
No.
colors on the wall.
I know I've shared this with you guys a lot, I'm sorry to be boring, but I went back to this Deland. In that 10 years, I just couldn't believe the little alley that I used to kind of be a little worried about walking down. God, I had the best taco I ever had in my life. They had a little flea market going on out there.
Yeah.
They had made, between the buildings, they turned them into mini pocket parks.
Cool.
So that,
Yep.
you know, I just could not believe I was in the same place. And it was a Friday night. You used to be able to fire a cannon right
Yeah.
down Main Street.
Right.
And now, you know, I'm like, am I in New York City? I mean, we're shoulder to shoulder
Yeah.
kind of thing at
Yeah.
7, 8 o'clock at night.
That's cool.
I just couldn't believe that, and it was decades, it took them decades to get to that point, but that, I thought. that
What
was
community?
intriguing. DeLand.
DeLand just was named. They just won the Main Street competition from Skill. Yep. America's Best Main Street.
I started volunteering with them when they had dead flies in the windows.
Cool.
That was the rallying cry,
Mhm.
was dead flies in the windows.
Yeah.
Because when you walked by and saw brick walls, when you'd walk through Delaney, that day, what you saw was abandoned buildings with dead flies and dirt and crap.
Question in terms of, I don't know if it's strategy or what, so I'll just question, but how far as an organization, do we have to go to get that change? For instance, we started like a vacant storefront program, and we've had a little bit of success putting some artwork in some of the businesses. But, you know, we're at the point where we're calling up property owners and saying, we'll come in and clean everything out for you and put up the new display and everything. I mean, should we as an organization go that far, or where do we cross the line, I guess, in terms of doing that? Because I think right now we're willing to, but in your experience.
Well, I would say that the line that you cross would be when you decide to go to the Dills building with some sledgehammers and start to take the brick down.
That has gone too far.
You know,
That's the
Honestly,
line.
if there is the manpower to go and proactively attempt to provide that service to property owners, and you find that the property owners are somewhat receptive when the offer is made, then yeah, then do it. And in theory, you shouldn't have to do it too many times before you don't have to do it anymore. You know what I mean? It's just because you're doing it now doesn't really mean that you're locking yourself into having to do that forever. Like, it's a transitional strategy that sometimes you just got to do the legwork. And I would argue that part of the reason that you have the respect that you've earned and the momentum that you have is because you've been willing to go that far. So many communities create a vacancy program, and then because no one volunteers to let them do it to their vacant property, they're like, well, we created a program, but we weren't able to do it anywhere. Well, by nature, if a property owner is having flies in their windows,
They're not care about it.
they're not going to give you the call.
Right.
So you do have to be a little selective and
You
proactive.
know, just, Ricky chairs the design committee. It was, when we started the vacant, took that storefront that you were talking about, where the MOVR.
Yep.
And we had some great artists in town, and we created one of those as an ice cream
What could be
fountain.
here?
And then on the other side, we put a partition up, and we got art in from the college and from
Cool.
the art center, and showed it what an art
Gallery
gallery
space.
would look like. So
Yeah.
we created, trying to create inspiration there.
That's cool.
You know, a little soda fountain over here, and a little art gallery over here, and those little, and they weren't big spaces, but we showed how you. I
Right.
love the idea that trying to actually put a business in
Mhm.
those little places, and I think the MOVRC would
I will
be
never
amenable.
I will never forget as a kid, we had gone downtown for a New Year's Eve event, which was one of the two times that I was allowed to go downtown over the course of the year, because every time else it was too dangerous. And it was probably 1994, I'm going to guess, or 93 maybe. And there was this property that had steps that went down under the sidewalk, and then there was a space kind of underneath it. And there was a available sign, and it said, available space, office, restaurant, and then it said Cheers Bar, question mark, because like the entry was just like Cheers, you know, and that space ended up becoming Coffee Underground, which was a coffee shop, and the Coffee Underground literally led the transitional charge for our downtown. And it is kind of cool how, you know, the owners will tell you they saw that sign, and it made them, you know, it's like, huh, yeah.
I love, one of the things I like about downtown is there between the Hazard Museum and the entrance to.
Yep.
You know, that's really cool, and I really liked, it made me feel hopeful, the idea that we could be putting some structures up there in these places that will look over the wall.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's short of the wall coming down, and then, you know, I'm worried about, we'll start putting murals on it, and then it's gonna get ugly.
Yeah, I
What we heard yesterday, or day before yesterday, we have.
Well, they can't get it because they've been flooded so many times. Can't cover them anymore. And so, yeah. Well, we do flood here.
Well, and that's the thing. I would actually argue. I mean, Aaron and I talked amongst ourselves about murals on the flood wall. Plenty of communities along. I mean, Paducah, Kentucky, has been known for that. And I gotta be honest, I wouldn't go that route. It is what it is. I like the big welcome to Parkersburg on the outside of the flood wall that you see from the water. I think that's
Ooh,
nice.
let's get PKB on the wall.
But you know, I think that I think that
Thank
the
you.
cool architectural engagement of the wall is something that could be.
I like that
Even
idea.
if we could light it up, we talked about doing some lighting campaigns.
Now that's a
brilliant.
whole different world, and with
is a whole
with the
different world.
advancements that they've come into, and you know, part of it's lighting the wall. The other part of it would be, can you imagine how amazing that space would be with all the rail trestles and all the columns and
Just
stone
like
and
during the taste, when you light the trees up, you have the LED light at the bottom. Imagine if
Uh-huh.
that at nighttime, or even that existing rail bridge was lit up.
and now those systems, those LED
That-
systems
that's
are.
fabulous.
You can get them with 14 different programmable colors, all controlled by an iPhone app. So, like literally with an app, you can open it up and bam, here's our program for Independence Day. Bam, here's St. Patty's Day. Bam, here's Valentine's Day, and the lights. I mean, it's cool.
What
Really
about
cool.
just at the mouth of that entrance?
Right.
Or maybe not with a mural, but some sort of wayfinding so people know that there's something on the other side of there.
Of the entrance to the flood wall,
Point Park.
To go into where Point Park is.
I have to tell you, I don't actually. If somebody makes it that far, I don't think you have to worry about getting them through. There's a little bit of a secret garden action going on there. You know, it's like because there's like nothing else around, and then you got this
There's
whole.
no retail on that side
No,
anyway.
the problem
I
is the traffic from Julianne Street to the flood wall, that happens because people come to the museum, get their tickets, go on the boat, come back.
Yeah.
But it's getting them to drive around because of all our one-way streets and get them back down Market
Yeah,
Street.
we need the
That's,
wayfinding.
that's the.
Oh, the one-way streets. That's a whole nother. Y'all need
Person,
a
I wonder if the
nice
sheep
little
coming in
one-way
that'll
street
kinda
tech
continue
tech
that, you know what I
visit.
mean? 'Cause that's retail that's moving
I think
closer.
we can make
to
it
where-
work for us.
You just really just need to. I'll tell you, this is what you need to do.
Right.
That's
So more
exactly what
people
Need to
will be going
Take a
that
map of downtown, and every single time there's a one-way street, you need to draw an arrow on the other side
way. Corner.
and make it two-way.
You can make like a route.
That's it.
Done.
Not make a route, but
I'll tell you, you know, I moved away, obviously, and I would come home, you know, sometimes because we lived out in the country, I wouldn't come into Parkersburg for years.
Yeah.
Years, because I just go to my family place and no reason to come in. Oh, man, that first time I came downtown and those streets were changed, it was horrible. I was in the wrong place, wrong time, I really couldn't find parking.
Can't believe you
then.
did that, Ricky.
I know, I'm sorry.
Stop it.
Lay it at the city's feet.
Before your time.
I know. Well, thank you.
That was the other tagline is downtown PKB. There's only one way.
That is.
That's
great.
awesome. That's
So.
good stuff.
That is-
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much.
you.
Thanks for everything this week.
More than met my expectations.
We're great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great.
It's-
Thank you.